Okay. Hello and welcome, everyone. Today we'll continue studying the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta in our weekly online Dhamma group. And we are again happily joined by Venerable Dhammo, who's residing in Sri Lanka at the Meditation Center. After 1 hour of reading, we will stop and have a Q&A, and there will be the chance to ask questions, but also have some more discussion if there's someone in the voice channel. And before we start, is there someone in the reading group who would like to lead the precepts for us today?
I would like to.
Okay, thank you, Sanda.
Ahang Bante Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami Dutiyampi Ahang Bante Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami Tatyampi Ahang Bante Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Isaranagamanang nititang.
Ama Bante.
Arnatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu micchācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta Samadhiyami.
Sura Meraya Madja Pamadatana Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibbutting yanti tasma silang visodhaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So before we start, I will send now the reading order. If someone in the audience also wants to join the stage to read, if they have done the at-home course, you are welcome to send a request so we can see that you want to read. And also, we are currently at the paragraph on page 82 of the PDF, which starts with the momentary concentration. It's still under the heading of insight without absorption. Since I was last time the reader, or did I forget to mention something? I'm not sure. So the next person would be Sanda. Before we start, Bante, do you maybe want to say something? If you're ready, you can start.
The momentary concentration mentioned above refers to the fairly calm state before access concentration is attained in the course of meditating on objects of tranquility meditation, samatha kammatthana, and also to concentration for insight, vipassana samadhi. Of these two, concentration for insight having the same characteristic as access concentration, suppressing the hindrances, is also called access concentration as explained earlier. That this momentary concentration, when it becomes well developed, can keep the mind tranquil, just like absorption, is borne out by the personal experience of meditators practicing Satipatthana meditation.
And so again, just to recap, the point is that we are aspiring to a state of meditation where the hindrances don't arise, where your mind is fixed and focused, and your mind has a quality to it that isn't getting upset about things. That's basically what it means. Not clinging to things, not yearning for things, not wishing things were different, not holding on to the things that you experience, hoping that they stay, that you have a pure and objective state of mind. And there, you can accomplish that forcefully by picking a single object and fixing your attention on that conceptual object, something that you imagine in your mind. Or you can acquire it by focusing on reality. And there is a difference in result when you do that. When you focus on reality, it's more uncomfortable at first, and it's harder and more challenging, let's say. But the difference is that you are fixed and focused on reality, so you gain wisdom. If you fix and focus on a conceptual object, you don't gain the wisdom. So that's the problem. But that can be a good way to start for many people. If you focus on a single object, it's called samatha, tranquility meditation. And after doing that, once you've developed that, it is possible to then use that strength of mind and apply it to reality and to apply it to reality afterwards. In our tradition, we skip that part. So we start by practicing developing concentration on reality. which is fully valid, but it's less impressive feeling. It doesn't feel as powerful because you don't get this trance ability in the mind where the mind can fix and focus on a single object. You don't get all of the pleasurable experiences involved there. But it's more direct, it's more accessible. In modern times, it's more realistic, really. But the point is that because we're trying for that, we have to explain or reassurance for people that that this is valid practice. People will wonder where the concentration aspect is, and so they have to understand that it may not feel like a trance meditation, but that's kind of necessary. It's a necessary reality of focusing on reality, because reality is constantly changing. You could never be fixed and focused in the way you can be fixed and focused on a single object. But this is a doubt that people have. Is this really meditation? Is this really working? I don't feel very concentrated. But it would be impossible to have that level of concentration on ultimate reality, because reality is chaotic, changing, unpredictable. It's not something you can grasp. It's not something you can hold on to or fix and focus on. You have to be more flexible. You gain concentration. It doesn't feel much like what we would normally think of as concentrated. It's not the fixedness of it. But the mind is very strong, as he says, over time, becomes very strong. And then there's the reassurance. Once you get to the level of attainment, where you've really attained this level of concentration, then you're absolutely clear that, oh, this does work. It just doesn't feel it like it in the beginning, because it doesn't feel like that's where you're headed. You're not starting out with a very strong state of mind.
In the Visuddhimagga Mahattika, we find momentary unification of mind is concentration that lasts only for the duration of the moment of each arising. Kana chitteka gagtati, kana mata titiko samadhi. When this momentary concentration for insight occurs without interruption, with mind and matter as its object, maintaining tranquility in a single mode at a stretch and not being overcome by opposing defilements, as it fixes the mind immovably as if in absorption.
Namatartitiko means established for only a moment. Titika is this idea of being fixed or established, like when you dig a fence post or a pillar into the ground, and you place the pillar into the ground. Titika, you've placed it. When you place the mind on an object, this is only for a moment when you're focused on reality, because again, reality only lasts one moment at a time. It's constantly arising and ceasing.
Accordingly, a person engaged in insight meditation and intent on developing himself up to the path and fruition stage should endeavor, if possible, to attain the first, second, third, fourth jhana, or all four jhanas. Having attained any of them, one should train oneself to maintain them and to be skillful with them. Failing, however, to reach the jhanic stage, one should strive to bring about access concentration in the neighborhood of the jhana. A meditator whose vehicle is pure insight, vipassana yanika, on the other hand, who begins with the contemplation of mind and matter, such as the four primary elements, should try to establish momentary concentration, which is capable of suppressing the hindrances, just like access concentration. When it is fully established, progressive insight will arise, beginning with analytical knowledge of mind and matter, nama rupa paricheda jnana. Thus, momentary concentration and access concentration are also to be regarded as the path of right concentration.
So again, this is the section, all of this is a discussion on the section on right concentration and addressing this idea that it's only the jhanas. This is an argument that you'll hear. People will quote this text and say, see, the Buddha said it's only the jhanas, which, I mean, there's no arguing with it being the jhanas, but the word only isn't there. And so it's nuanced. And it's just dogmatic to say it's only the jhanas and it's only these jhanas, what we mean by jhanas and so on. Because there's two different kinds of jhanas talked about in the text. And because it's not technically, well, jhana has different parts to it or different levels to it, you could say. And you don't have to be technically, or you really can't be technically in a fixed state. You have to be in a fixed state on momentary arising experiences. So it's just a little bit less simplistic than it's made out to be. And it's important to talk about this because people will make these claims and say, therefore you have to practice our type of meditation, and these other people who are practicing a different type of meditation are wrong. It's this kind of thing that we deal with, and we receive this sort of criticism in the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition quite often, when it's, one of the most orthodox approaches to the Buddhist teaching that there is. It's just that it's not very romantic, because the idea of entering into trance sounds much more enticing. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not to belittle that, but we shouldn't underestimate how challenging it is to develop such strong concentration prior to even beginning to practice satipatthana. Much less accessible for most people. And problematic, because if you're not really a strong mind, it's easy to get stuck in it, in the sense that you're just content with that tranquil state. And this is a problem that we would identify in other groups or other meditators in other traditions, that they're very much attached to that fixed state and very disconcerted when they're forced to focus on momentarily arising states. A long time ago, we did discuss this Thai version of Angulimala, which I thought was just so great in its depiction of some very important concepts. That it took liberties. It wasn't exactly canonical, and that's true, but and being completely shook when they're forced to confront impermanent suffering and non-self, and realize that they've built a house of cards that is not nearly as strong and stable as it feels, as it seems to them. And it really resonated with me, because I'd heard this very experience that is depicted in this movie from a very famous monk who was a teacher of samatha meditation in Thailand, Lumpo Sot. He's one of the most famous monks in Thai, popular Thai Buddhism. He's passed away long ago, but I was listening to a talk of his teacher when he came to practice Satipatthana Vipassana, and he kept seeing lights. And he said, I saw, well, Dhammakai is what he would call it, Dhammakai, which means the body of the Dhamma, but it was a crystal. His teaching was that you visualize a crystal, and he said, oh, I can see it so purely. And his teacher was giving this talk, relating how it had gone, and he said, oh, I told him, oh, very good, very good. Just say seeing. So he was like, I have to, because he's so excited about it, I can't say, oh, that's bad, or I can't kind of tell him it's useless or anything. I had to say, oh, good. Just say seeing. And then the next day he came back and he said, I saw it again. Oh, good. Just say seeing. And like by the third day, he came back and he was just shook to his core. He said it just disappeared. And I realized it was nothing. It was not like fixed and the ultimate truth or the ultimate reality, whatever he had conceived of this Dhammakaya as this body of Dhamma. It just disappeared, and it seems kind of meaningless to say, well, of course it disappeared. I mean, things come and go, but that's not what it means. It means he got it. He realized that this feeling that we have of self, of something being an entity, is false. It was this clear realization that's very important in the practice of mindfulness, where you see impermanence. Something that sounds kind of simple. Okay, impermanence, I get that. Things are impermanent. But you really don't get it. Not until you see it like monks like this see it. And he really just had an awakening experience. I mean, that wouldn't probably be a moment of enlightenment, but it's an important step on the path. And he went on to write the greatest praise about this practice, saying this is the right way of Buddhist practice, the way that leads to the goal. It really was very eye-opening for him. So this is the kind of experience that you see these sorts of people go through, people who are attached to samatha meditation, when they finally realize that this attachment to the fixed and focused and trance states is it's unreliable. It's not a refuge. Certainly not the goal. So yeah, this is still talking about the Eightfold Noble Path. This is the first thing that the Buddha has said so far. He said that there are these two extremes, that one who has left the world behind in search of spiritual development should not cultivate. This is indulgence in sensual pleasure, or seeking out pleasure, sensual pleasure, and self-torture. So these are seeking out pain. These are the two sorts of seeking outs that are not to be cultivated. And by avoiding these, the Buddha said, I found the middle way. And the middle way is the Eightfold Noble Path. And so that's what he's describing here. And the next set is the next item is the path factor of right view, or the wisdom group, which is right view and right thought. Oh, yeah, it's one way of describing the goal of mindfulness is to have right view, because we have views that are in no way connected to our experience of momentary phenomena, no way connected to ultimate reality, to what we're actually experiencing. They come from beliefs. I believe, they come from conjecture, they come from extrapolation, hypothesis, they come from culture, parents, religion, texts, books that we read, people who are charismatic, that sort of thing. Can even be people who are manipulative, tricking us into believing something, charlatans and so on. But quite often we build up a library of views, and mindfulness is, because it's a direct connection, a doorway into seeing the nature of reality. It breaks down a lot of those views and gives us right view. And you could say that there's things outside of these Four Noble Truths that you see, but they're not. So there's many truths that you will see that aren't in these Four Noble Truths, but this is what's important to see. Why it's useful to have right view over wrong view is mainly because of this. Because without this, you have the wrong idea of what causes suffering. You have the wrong idea of the way to freedom from suffering. You have the wrong idea of the right path, right way to live your life, the right path to follow. As you pay attention to reality, you get a much simpler and more accurate outlook on how to live your life, on why you should live your life in a certain way, of why you suffer, what causes suffering, and so on. I mean, just see it for yourself. So you don't even have to be told these things. Talking about right view is, I mean, he's going to talk about the Four Noble Truths. This is a big part of this sutta. But the point is that through the practice of mindfulness, you will see for yourself. If I ask you the question, what is suffering? What is the cause of suffering? When you practice mindfulness, you don't need me to tell you. You can answer that. Maybe not in words, but you know for yourself. It's quite simple. It's not something to be doubted because you looked, you paid attention. And if you pay attention, you will see. It's quite simple. As opposed to reading a book and saying, yeah, that sounds right, I believe that, right? Some of our views come from experience. So how we can relate to this is when we live, people who have lived long lives and have gained experience. Over the years, they've learned what causes suffering, so they have a general sense. This is very similar, except it's much more accurate and precise and clear, much more direct. And it should feel fairly similar, which is why it can be useful to I mean, it's considered to be a good thing to respect your elders and listen to what they have to say because they have experience. And that's really what we're talking about here. Views based on experience. It's just that the experience here is much better than simply living an ordinary life will ever bring.
According to the Anguttara Nikaya commentary, there are 5 types of right view. Right view about ownership of karma, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Right view of absorption, Jnana Samadhi. Insight, Vipassana Samadhi. Right view of the path, Magga Samadhi. And right view of the fruit, Phala Samadhi. Commentary on the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta mentions also 5 types similar to the above, but instead of jhana samadhi, there is the right view of reviewing pacha vivkhana samadhi. Combining the two lists, we have 6 types of right view.
In the above list, right view of the fruit accompanies the 4 fruits that are the result of 4 paths. The knowledge of the Noble Path is spontaneously followed by knowledge of fruition. There is nothing special to be done to attain it. Right view of reviewing also occurs spontaneously after attaining the path and its fruition, so no effort is needed to bring it about. One should strive only to gain the first 4 types of right view, which we will therefore elaborate.
So, just to clarify that, fruition is a moment that occurs after the path, and review is something that just happens because of attaining the path. This is more technical and not really something we should be concerned with. So what's left is sort of right view in relation to worldly events like rebirth, right view in regards to death and old age and sickness and birth and so on, right view in regards to karma and that sort of thing. Right view, and then the right view regarding samatha practice, tranquility, the right view regarding vipassana practice, and then the right view regarding the path, which is basically nibbana. Nothing regarding is probably not the best word. It's right view in relation to. So it also it also refers to the attainment. So right view that comes from attaining samatha practice, right view that comes through the practice of vipassana, and right view that comes at the moment of attaining the path. Anyway, he's going to talk about them.
Right view about the ownership of kamma. Kamma sakatta samadhi means belief in and acceptance of the view that there is kamma and there are results of that kamma. Any action is kamma, which produces good or bad results. For instance, doers of evil deeds reap evil consequences. Criminals have to face punishment for their crimes, the lightest of which may be condemnation by society. Abusive language is likely to lead to a retort. A stern look charged with ill will likely be reciprocated, while a happy smile begets a happy smile. A friendly greeting is likely to be met with a friendly response.
A well-behaved child who has had a good education will grow into a prosperous and successful adult. Following a lucrative trade or industry leads to wealth and prosperity, unprofitable endeavors such as gambling surely leads to ruination. Instances of good or bad results following good or evil actions are within our daily experience. Throughout the endless cycle of existence, this law of karma prevails: good action leading to good results, evil action leading to bad consequences. As a result of evil deeds done in the past existences, one has to suffer evil consequences such as a short lifespan with various ailments, ugliness, poverty, and lack of attendance in the present life. Evil acts such as killing, torturing, stealing, robbing, or lying done in this life will bear fruit in future existences by being born in the lower realms accompanied by evil retribution.
Lack of attendance more like means lack of associates. So it includes things like friends, benefactors, teachers. And so each of these, there are texts that go into detail with the sorts of things that lead to these bad consequences, and the inverse, the things that lead to good consequences, having good health, having long life, that sort of thing. One thing that I'm not sure if he's going to go into, I mean, he probably should. I don't know if he's going to mention it, but I'll mention it anyway. If he does, you'll just see it confirmed. That if you're wondering about these sorts of things and wondering how you could possibly see that and even whether it's true, to get an idea of what we're really talking about when we talk about karma, we're really talking about the momentary consequences or the immediate consequences moment by moment of how one thing leads to another inevitably. How there's no avoiding the negative effects or the positive effects of a intentional deed or of a state of mind that is wholesome or unwholesome. And that's attained through the practice of mindfulness again, at the second stage of insight. So fairly early on, when the meditator starts to see body and mind, moments of experience causing each other, being causes and effects for each other. So seeing how when there is pain and then you get upset about the pain, that's cause and effect. When you get upset about something and then you feel pain as a result of getting upset, or tension or stress as a result of it, that sort of thing. You become very acutely aware of how one thing leads to another. And that has a ripple effect on your perception. You're able to then take that to the macro level, not consciously, but you start to see the cause and effect nature of things around you, how this leads to this effect. I'm sad now because I did something bad. I hurt someone, and that really was a bad thing for me to do, and now I'm suffering because of that. I mean, you become very sensitive to karma. This isn't something that you have to logically work out and say, oh yeah, I saw that person and they received the consequences of their acts. If you do that, it becomes sketchy. It becomes dubious, because of course we see people doing terrible things and prospering. So on the macro level, you can't take it intellectually and analyze the state of yourself or people around you. You have to take it to the micro level, the momentary level, and extrapolate from there, and then you'll see in general terms, to the extent that you're personally capable, you'll see the very real reality of cause and effect of karma. How in the realm of cause and effect, there are those deeds that are going to be meaningfully consequential. Good deeds lead to good results. Bad deeds lead to bad results. And you don't have to be told which are good and which are bad. You'll see and experience for yourself. And you'll really get a sense of the difference between good and evil deeds.
Good deeds done in previous existences come to fruition in the present life as good results. So one enjoys longevity, free from ailments, endowed with beauty and wealth, and attended by many followers. Avoiding evil acts of killing, torturing, stealing, robbing, and being well disposed to generous deeds and helping others, one is reborn in higher existences, enjoying the fruits of these good deeds. Good and bad results are evident realities. The belief that these realities are the results of good and bad actions is the right view, that one's own kamma is one's own property. This right view is not brought about by one's own penetrative intuition like insight knowledge. It is mere acceptance of the view based on faith in the words of the elders and scriptures, after weighing the evidence of known instances and their credibility. This right view is included in the list of 10 meritorious deeds and is known as meritorious right view, sucharita samaditi. The wrong view, michaditi, that denies the truth of kamma and its result is one of the 10 demeritorious deeds. It is called demeritorious wrong view, ducharita michaditi. Please refer to my discourse on the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta for further elucidation.
Right. So my bad, sort of. That this is not actually what I was talking about. Later he's going to explain the level of right view that comes from the practice of mindfulness. So even before practicing mindfulness, obviously you can have right view. It's not very strong because, again, it's based, as he says, it's based on faith, it's based on instruction, based on the convincing arguments and descriptions by others. But why this is important, why this is worth talking about, is because without that, you're not likely to be interested in the practice of things like meditation or the Buddhist teaching at all. You're not going to be interested in spirituality very much if you can't see that there's a purpose behind it. So religious groups that believe that faith in their religion is enough to be a spiritual individual or be on the right path have wrong view. They have the view that you don't need to do anything. You just believe and that's it. There are Buddhist groups that have this view. There are Buddhist groups, or groups that call themselves Buddhist, that are so opposite of how we see Buddhism that they will say that the practice of the Buddhist teaching indicates that you don't have faith in the Buddha. Because if you had faith in the Buddha, you would allow the Buddha to enlighten you, or you would allow the Buddha to you to be reborn in the Pure Land. So when you practice the Buddha's teaching, you are showing that you don't have, you aren't willing to give yourself up to faith. I mean, this is precisely, from our perspective, wrong view. This is an exact, perfect example of wrong view. So there's no sense in our minds that these people are actually practicing Buddhism when they say that. They have wrong view, and quite obviously, quite glaringly obviously, that's going to prevent them from practicing meditation. They say it themselves. Don't practice meditation. A person who is, what was some of the things, like a person who is evil is more likely to be reborn in the Pure Land because they don't try to rely on their own goodness. Something like that. The person who practices goodness is clearly not interested in letting the Buddha, or having faith in the Buddha to bring you to the Pure Land. There are groups of Buddhists that teach like this. And it was interesting to study this. When I learned about this, I saw how it actually, if you read the history, it actually developed over time logically. Because once you believe that the Buddha can pull you or cause you to be reborn in the Pure Land, then the natural conclusion eventually becomes that why would you practice? Practicing would be seen as a slight against that. Anyway, so Buddhism has this. Outside of Buddhism, there are these wrong views, and there are different kinds of wrong views, like wrong view about self, that you can control the mind, that there is a self in charge, which is dangerous if you hold on to it, can prevent you from letting go, prevent you from having objective attention, because you'll always be trying to fix your mind. And this is a common problem that new meditators have. They're trying to fix their meditation, to quiet the mind, trying to force the mind to stop thinking. And that's based on wrong view, can be based on wrong view, that kind of thing, that will inhibit your practice. So yes, before practicing, it's important to have some level of right view, at least to the extent of not having wrong view, not clinging to something that is going to block your objective perception or awareness of reality as it is.
Meritorious right view, or right view about the ownership of Dhamma, forms the root of all wholesome actions. Based on this root, evil deeds are avoided, and wholesome deeds, such as generosity and morality, are done. The meritorious deeds of tranquility and insight meditation may also be cultivated. For this reason, this right view and morality are said to be preliminary requirements for the wholesome deeds of concentration and insight.
Since you have asked for a brief teaching to practice in solitude, I urge you to work first for the purification of those states that form the basis to develop concentration and insight. What are these preliminary requirements? They are purified morality and right view. When you have purified morality and established right view, then depending on morality, you may go on to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness in 3 modes: contemplating internal objects, contemplating external objects, and contemplating internal and external objects.
Yeah, I mean, there are other general senses in which wrong view is a detriment or is a hindrance to cultivation of practice. As he says, if you don't believe in the efficacy of good deeds, or the danger of bad deeds, I mean, it's just going to lead you to do bad deeds and good deeds. It'll prevent you from keeping the moral precepts, and it prevents you from having the strength of mind, the confidence in yourself. If you don't do good deeds, you don't have a sense that you're a good person. You won't have a sense that you deserve good things. It's quite psychological. A person who does good deeds tends to have a sense that they deserve good deeds. A person who is dedicated to goodness has strength of mind that allows them to have confidence in their own ability to practice. And this is why right view is very important, but it's also why the Buddha, on many occasions, did acknowledge and appreciate the value of good deeds, of worldly good deeds, kindness to others, generosity, that sort of thing, and obviously ethics and morality, which are crucial. It isn't necessary for you to give charity or be kind or generous to others externally, like to actually do any such good deeds, but it is absolutely necessary for you to abstain from bad deeds, which is quite obvious and clear for anyone who takes up the practice of mindfulness, that even just breaking any of the 5 precepts is pretty much a showstopper. It really clearly gets in your way of having a clear mind and seeing things as they are. Yeah, having this sort of right view is why it's often easier for cultural Buddhists, people who grew up as Buddhists but never practiced, why it's often easier for them to pick up the practice of mindfulness. Because they know about these things and it resonates with them, and they've spent their lives generally being good people and avoiding unwholesome acts, more so than people who are never interested in these things or thought that it was good to do all these things, good to take drugs and alcohol is just such a common thing. Good to kill, good to steal, good to lie, good to cheat. Many places in the world where these are considered good things.
From these words of the Blessed One, it is obvious that right view about ownership of one's karma and the path factors of morality are the preliminary requirements that have to be established before a meditator starts practicing meditation. It is clear also that for the development of insight, jhana and access concentration are prerequisites to achieve purification of mind. Further, it is evident that in order to establish the noble path, the path of insight, otherwise called the preliminary path, Pubbha Bhaga Magga, which is the precursory to it, must first be developed. What I have described is the 3 stages of the path: the basic path, Mula Magga; the preliminary path, Pubbha Bhaga Magga; and the noble path, Ariya Magga. Developing them leads to Nibbana.
Austin, are you able to continue?
Yes. The path in 3 stages. Pious Buddhists customarily wish for the speedy realization of Nibbana whenever they perform any meritorious deed. The highest goal will not, of course, be attained immediately by merely wishing for it. It will be attained only in one of the higher planes, which they will reach by virtue of their good deeds, and then only if they actually develop the Noble Eightfold Path. So, why wait for a future existence? Why not start now and work for liberation in this very life? Consider how liberation may be achieved. Liberation may be achieved by developing a noble eightfold path, which must be preceded by the preliminary path. However, to develop this path, the basic requirements must first be fulfilled. That is, the establishment of right view, the 3 path factors of morality, and the 3 path factors of concentration.
For those who take refuge in the Buddha's dispensation, right view about the ownership of karma has already been established. As for path factors of morality, if they are not yet already established in it, lay people can accomplish it by observing the precepts on the eve of starting the meditation practice. If a bhikkhu entertains any doubt about the purity of his morality, he should, at the very outset, strive for its purification by undergoing probation, parivasa, and rehabilitation, manatta. If he possesses unallowable property, he should discard it and confess his offense. After thus ensuring the purity of his morality, a bhikkhu should strive to attain 1, 2, 3, or all 4 jhanas. If unable to do so, he should work to gain at least access concentration in the neighborhood of jhana. If he cannot work for jhana, he must try to achieve the momentary concentration for insight, which has the same characteristics of suppressing the hindrances as the access concentration by contemplating the 4 primary elements, etc. This does not involve establishment of concentration as such, but by keeping close awareness of the true nature of mind and matter, concentration automatically arises. However, by having the attention dispersed over many objects or having it fixed on objects which are not easily discernible, concentration takes a long time to arise. Confining the attention to a limited number of objects that can be distinctly noted will facilitate and hasten the development of concentration. Therefore, we instruct our meditators to start with noting the element of motion, vayo dhatu, the characteristics of which, stiffness, pressure, and motion, manifest in the abdominal region. As the abdomen rises, note rising. As it falls, note falling. Begin by noting just these 2 motions, rising and falling. However, this is not all that needs to be done. While noting the rising and falling of the abdomen, if thinking arises, note that as thinking, and then revert to noting the rising and falling. If some painful feeling appears in the body, note that, and when it subsides or has been noted for some time, revert to noting rising and falling. If there is bending, stretching, or moving of the limbs, note bending, stretching, or moving. Whatever bodily movement there is must be noted. Then revert to the noting of the abdominal movements. When you see or hear anything clearly, note seeing or hearing for some time, then return to the rising and falling movements. And since we've reached the hour, we will stop our reading for today here. So this was we are almost done with the paragraph. But anyway, we can stop here. So we will move on to discussion and the Q&A now. So everyone is invited to ask their questions in the chat now, or also to write their question, to use their microphone if they like. And you're also allowed to discuss anything that was related to the text, or you're welcome to discuss it. And you are encouraged to ask practice-related questions or questions that seem to be of importance. You can also ask curiosity questions, but it's less likely that they will be asked, depending also on how many questions there are today. And those in the voice group, you're invited to turn on your camera, but you don't have to.
Bhante, the first question that we have: assuming that the ultimate goal of vipassana practice is arahantship, in what ways is the living experience of an arahant better than a non-arahant? Is it worth the effort to achieve arahantship?
Well, I think it's fair to say that most people wouldn't appreciate the greatness of being an arahant. For most Buddhists, even, it's enough to think of yourself as being a generally good person, with the idea that being a generally good person is better than being a generally bad person. Not just because you feel less guilty, but because you suffer less. Because your life is full of more peace and happiness and good things. But the problem with a lot of those good things is that, well, the problem with all of those good things is that none of them are satisfying. No good thing you could attain will ever satisfy you, and that being a generally good person is still fraught with a great amount of suffering and stress. Not just in this life, but in having to be reborn again and again and again. So many people have come to a stable state in their lives where they have a sense that everything is good. Many Buddhists come to this, Buddhist practitioners come to this, and so they become complacent. And they forget how unpleasant it was to get to this point. And they lose sight of the fact that they could have to go through all that unpleasantness again of growing up and making mistakes and hurting other people and being hurt by other people, all of the learning that we have to go through in life. So it's hard for people to appreciate the danger that they're facing when they become complacent and have the sense of stability and so on. But the further you go on the path, the more you free yourself from those mistakes of believing something to be satisfying when it's not, of believing something to be stable when it's not, of believing something to be yours and controllable when it's not. And so you suffer less and less and less and less. And that's the path of Buddhism. An arahant is someone who has understood this perfectly, that nothing is worth holding on to, that nothing will satisfy you, nothing that arises is stable. They see it clear enough that they never make that mistake. And as a result of never making those mistakes of seeing things as stable, satisfying, controllable, they don't suffer at all. That's the value of it. Is it worth it? Again, I think for most people it's not that interesting because they have a sense that everything's okay. But it's kind of like this metaphor or allegory, I don't know what you call it, of pulling the thread on a wool sweater. You see a loose thread on the wool sweater, you say, oh, well, that's got to be fixed, and so you pull the loose thread. But as you pull the loose thread, you see that there's more and more and more until the sweater becomes completely undone. Buddhist practice is like that, where the better you get at seeing the problems with clinging, the more problems with clinging you notice, the more subtle are the problems that you notice. And so this is one meaning of the word opanayika. The Dhamma of the Buddha is opanayika, means it leads you onward. There's never a confusion about what more needs to be done. The more you practice, the more clear you are on what still needs to be done. So you see progress, but you also see more clearly the things that you still need to work on about yourself. So, I mean, the answer is objectively yes. Of course, it's valuable, and yes, it is incredibly different, and the difference is profound, meaningful, and of the utmost value and importance. But it's not easy to. It's not great to fixate on the idea of being an arahant, because it's very difficult to appreciate. Much better to start where you are and to acknowledge that you're suffering and you're causing yourself suffering, that from time to time you make mistakes and you have bad habits. I mean, some people will not appreciate that they're causing themselves suffering. So they will externalize the causes. They will say, well, this is causing me suffering, so all I have to do is avoid this and it won't cause me suffering. So a big part of the path that leads you to appreciate things like arahantship is realizing that you're the cause of your suffering, or your own mind is the cause of your suffering, not something external. The experiences aren't the problem. The problem is that you don't like them, that you react to them, or that you like them and don't like when you don't get them. Big part of why people don't appreciate enlightenment is this, that they have wrong view. What Mahasi Sayadaw is talking about. They misattribute suffering and the cause of suffering. People will think they're not suffering and this isn't suffering without realizing how stressed they are, how unpleasant they are, how they're hurting themselves and others.
Bhante, the next question that we have. I recognize that my thoughts are autonomous and I don't control them when they come or go. How did I realize this when most people don't, and they instead allow themselves to be moved by those thoughts?
I can't really answer that. I mean, that's the sort of answer of why are things the way they are. It's just, I mean, there is an answer. I don't have it. I don't know you well enough. And even if I did, I probably don't have the insight and wisdom of a Buddha to tell you how it came about. But I mean, generally speaking, it's because you have a better quality of mind, a better grasp on reality than other people do. I mean, anyone who begins to practice mindfulness is approached with these realities. So, I mean, you could first of all say that some people aren't interested in seeing, so they will never think to practice mindfulness. They have wrong views and, views that prevent them from being at all interested in even looking to see. But then there's also the fact that for some people, practice is just more difficult because their minds are not clear, they don't have the strong mental faculties. For other people, it's quite easy to see. That being said, even you seeing this is only a drop in the bucket. It's required for you to see this again and again and again, and to be objective about it to the point where it becomes clear to you that this is reality. And by clear, it means to the point where your mind lets go. And you'll know that you've reached the state because you'll have experienced nibbana as a result. It's not something that is just, oh, I see impermanence or suffering or non-self. It's, wow, that was a letting go experience. It's hard even to say that about it. I mean, I don't want to trivialize it. Otherwise, people begin to think that, oh, I must have experienced that. Wouldn't worry too much about that. Just to point out that this is a good sign. Don't be complacent about that. It's called jnana. And it can be a hindrance if you cling to it. If you say, oh yes, I learned this reality. So yeah, most people aren't interested in even learning and don't have the presence of mind to be cognizant of the value, the importance of seeing that. People are not able to see it.
The next question, Bhante. I have a question about the phrase beauty, wealth, and attended upon by many followers in the text. Are these not considered distractions?
Beauty is actually better translated as health, and health is valuable. Wealth is valuable in the sense that it frees you from having to worry about the obtainment of the requisites. But more generally speaking, it's important that you understand the difference between good and bad deeds. Because, yes, good deeds lead to all those things. But it's not the craving for those things that's important. It's the knowledge that good things lead to good results, such as this leads to this leads to that. But the general point is that knowing this leads you to do good deeds. And doing good deeds and knowing this, knowing good deeds as good deeds, gives you strength of mind, as I said. The real importance is that a person who does bad deeds, who doesn't see the difference between good and bad deeds, and therefore does some good and some bad deeds, is going to have a much harder time engaging in the practice of mindfulness, engaging in the Buddha's teaching, because their minds are clouded, their minds are distorted, they don't know up from down, basically. person who has a sense of right and wrong and good and bad is on the right path. If they don't have that, if they have wrong views, everything is distorted, and it's very difficult for them to then see reality, because it's part of reality. It is true that these things happen, and because they affect the mind. A person who does evil deeds pollutes their mind, right? Even just taking drugs and alcohol, if you don't see that that's bad, and you do take drugs and alcohol, it's basically impossible for you to cultivate mindfulness. If you don't know the good of good deeds, you're not likely to do deeds that give you confidence as in yourself as a person. So no, it's not about attaining these things. It's about the knowledge that that's reality. That's quite important before one begins the practice. Quite important to have a sense of there being a difference between good and bad, and that good is preferable. Good strengthens the mind, evil weakens it.
Bhante, the next question. Is it ill-advised to refer to more than one teacher at once, given that they are the same tradition and similar technique? What are your criteria for choosing a teacher?
I don't think it's wrong to refer. I don't know quite the word refer, but listen to, let's say. I guess that's what you mean, is use their teachings for reference, which basically means just listen to or learn from more than one teacher. I don't think there's ever really a problem, even across different traditions and disciplines. It's much more problematic to practice multiple techniques, to experiment, or to not pick and choose, but like go off a whim. Like today I feel like practicing like this, or tomorrow I think I'll practice like that, or I'll do half this, or I'll combine these two practices from this teacher and that is generally, I mean, I'm not the only one to say this. This is a common thing for you to hear, but I'll say it as well and agree with it. It's not a good idea. You should stick with one technique, one tradition, and generally one teacher. So when I said listening to teachers, I mean listening to teachers for the Dhamma. I mean, even listening to people who I don't agree with, people whose practice I don't think is the best. Often their Dhamma is spot on because they're just telling you about things that the Buddha taught, and they have a good sense of the teachings. I mean, maybe that's not even fair. I mean, people who practice different techniques, let's say, you can learn from them. There could be great knowledge, and they could even be accomplished on the path. But when it comes to actual practice, you should really just follow one teacher at a time. It's a real problem when people start to mix and pick and choose and combine and that sort of thing. I mean, the simple analogy is of medicine. Medicines are all approved medicines are all worthwhile, but mixing them is not a good thing. Not unless you have a doctor who can advise you on which medicines to mix and which not. Shouldn't have more than one doctor advising you on medication. As for criteria for choosing a teacher, it's pretty simple. I guess you could say there's two criteria. One, they know their stuff. Yeah, like that's theoretically, intellectually. And two, that they have positive qualities of mind. So if a teacher has greed, has anger, has delusion, that's a scratch against them. And if you see teachers getting angry, greedy, deluded, if you perceive those things in them, you can reduce their value appropriately in your mind. I mean, it can be difficult. It's often enough to go by, do they know their stuff? Are they following the orthodox teachings of the Buddha? It's also difficult to know. I mean, I think just having this attitude that you seem to have and that most people seem to have of skepticism, you don't have to, and you shouldn't, blindly follow any teacher. Of course, not even the Buddha, right? Blindly following the Buddha is not in your best interest. Doesn't lead you further along the path. You follow the teachings, you practice the teachings, and you see the results. And you have an open mind enough that if it's not working, you try something else. Just don't mix. If you want to leave, then go find another teacher. Move from one to another. It's not ideal, but it can be necessary. Maybe there's a better teaching out there somewhere. No? Maybe you found a better teaching. Maybe the teaching you're practicing isn't bringing good results. We hear of people who practice various traditions and say that it actually caused them to cultivate neurotic behavior, sort of thing. So certainly don't want to continue pursuing that. I mean, it's not always because of the teaching. It can be because of the specific teacher. It can be because of the specific student. Students misunderstand and cause their own problems. This happens. So it's complicated, but I mean, it's not mysterious or anything. Pretty simple. It's just it's difficult to find the right practice, difficult to practice it, difficult to find a good teacher, difficult to follow teachers. It can be hard because a good teacher will make you do things that make you uncomfortable, and that sounds a little bit bad because you don't want to be. I mean, there are teachers who are inappropriate with their students, so just being uncomfortable isn't sufficient, but it is necessary. And uncomfortable means you have to be taken out of your comfort zone. You have to be forced to face things about yourself that you often don't want to face. It can be hard to, and it can be hard to do that. And teachers will often push you in terms of, saying, I want you to practice longer sessions, that sort of thing, and practice more hours a day, that sort of thing. There are centers that really push that. They'll tell you they want you to do so many hours of practice. We don't do that. My teacher was fairly flexible, and he was called soft by another one of my teachers. Not in a bad way. He said it's just his way. So in our tradition, we're pretty soft in that sense, in terms of not forcing you in this or that, but challenging you. He was very challenging. He once kept telling me to practice all day and all night, and I'd come back the next day and he'd say, okay, do another night. He would have me practice all day and all night, which is challenging. Mostly because it makes us uncomfortable, the idea of it, having to face such reality of staying awake all day and all night and practicing all day and all night. The good teacher will know the student's limits. I mean, that's beyond me to know. I think it's beyond most teachers. I think it's fair to say that it's beyond everybody except the Buddha to know precisely their students' limits. So we get that wrong. That's understandable. Meaning sometimes you don't push the student enough. Sometimes you push them too hard, and they give up. That sort of thing. It's very difficult to know the student and for the student to know their limits and that sort of thing. I mean, I don't mean to scare you in that sense, but just to say that, well, maybe to say that you don't have to worry shouldn't be too fixated on trying to find the right teacher or the right teaching even. But you should find a good teacher and you should find a good teaching. Try that. I'm not trying to present myself as a good teacher or anything, but find a good teacher and a good teaching. And I guess I would say that this teaching is, I think, quite remarkably good, valuable, and effective, and that there are many people who can attest to that.
The next question, Bhante. I am a meditator. My manager asks me to reply to something that I consider unfair and insulting. If I reply, suffering will be created. If I don't, I might be fired. What to do?
I think you're being a little too vague for me to understand what you're talking about. I mean, maybe that English isn't your first language, but I'm not clear that. So I'll just have to, I'll deal with the various potential interpretations of what you're saying. So suppose you are being asked to say something unfair and insulting, right? Your words have to be unfair and insulting. But you have to be clear that that's true, because you might just be interpreting them in that way. So your words might not be. But if you're clear that this is me insulting someone else, this is me being unfair to someone else, then you don't do it. And you say that I can't do that. I mean, that's the Buddhist way of it. There are jobs where you'll be asked to kill, you know. So you're not going to get me to say, yeah, well, it's your job, do it, right? There is a mitigating factor. It's unwholesome if that's the case, but the mitigating factor is you're not doing it of your own accord. You're being pushed into doing it. You don't want to insult others. You don't want to be unfair, but you're being pushed to do it. So that's a mitigating factor. It's still unwholesome. You can't shirk the responsibility of actually agreeing to do something that hurts someone else. But if you're talking about, because literally what you're saying is that there is something unfair and insulting to you, and you're being asked to reply to that, then there's no problem there. If that's the case, then you don't worry about other people being unfair or insulting. You just yourself act fair and uninsulting, and then there's no problem. But it sounds like you're actually talking about something that requires you to be unwholesome, which you just don't do. And if you get fired, I mean, really, you do you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but it's unavoidable that it's unwholesome. If you're willing to live with the consequences of doing unwholesome deeds, most people are. Most people are willing to live with that to some extent, but it's not the right thing to do. Unfortunately, yeah, we're put in hard positions in life, told to do things that are wrong. But another thing you can say is it's a sign that that's not a great place to work if you're being told to do such things. Remember, in the end, life is only 6 things: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. Whether you have a job or you're fired, that's all it's ever going to be. So to some extent, I mean, that's radical, but to some extent, that is the saving grace. You don't have to worry about getting fired. You don't have to worry about having enough food to eat. in relation or insofar as it requires you to, or insofar as it impinges on your goodness as a person. So if there is no issue of ethical or unethical behavior, then absolutely you should try to have enough food to eat and shelter and fulfill your obligations to others, your responsibilities to partners and children and that sort of thing, but parents. But insofar as it impinges upon your ethics, none of that weighs heavier than good and bad deeds. And reminder that ultimately the most important thing for us to focus on is reality, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. And no matter what happens, that's all you're left with. That doesn't change. Nothing is really truly consequential. Not your suffering, not the suffering of others. Something that's consequential is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking, and your responses to that, your reactions to that. And if you can see reality as just those 6 things, you'll never have any cause for unwholesome behavior. I mean, what I mean to say is you'll have no cause for suffering. You'll have no occasion to suffer. And there's no suffering in just seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. No mental suffering therein. There's nothing horrible about anything you could see or hear or smell or taste or feel or think. It's too simple to admit anything that could hurt you. And you don't have to worry about getting fired, is what I'm trying to say. Whether you're living on the street or in a mansion, the building blocks don't change. And I guess more importantly, good deeds have good result and bad deeds have bad results. So if you're looking out for your future, you never have to worry if you practice the Dhamma.
Bhante, the next question that we have. During sitting meditation, I notice myself trying to look for liking or disliking of certain experiences, but am unable to know what I am feeling. Is it advised to look for feelings?
No,
Sorry, Bhante,
it's not advised to.
the camera is slightly cut off for the question.
That's okay.
Is it
I
advised
heard
to
it.
look for feelings this way? That was it, Bhante.
No, it's never advised to look for anything. You should note what's there. It can be useful to reflect on whether you didn't note something that was there when you realize, oh boy, I was really upset there and I didn't note it, or I really liked that and I didn't note it. So next time you can be better at realizing that it's there. But you don't have to go looking for it. Really, you have to just get better at realizing that that's what you're experiencing, if it's there. But if you look and you see only, for example, pain or pleasure, or something pleasant or something unpleasant. You can just simply note that. As you get better at noting that, it will become more clear whether you like or dislike. If you do notice liking or disliking, you should of course note that first.
The next question, Bante. During the meditation, I noticed that even a very fine noise can be very loud, and often I experience the feeling of frightened. One particular sitting practice, a tiny noise was nearly as loud as a metallic banging noise. Do you have any advice on this sort of experience?
Bhayanyana. It's very common in Bhayanyana. I mean, fear is unwholesome, so you have to make sure you note that. But it's common to be on edge. The heightening of senses is, I mean, it's just incidental. You don't have to pay much attention to that. Just note, you can note knowing if you know that your senses have been heightened, but absolutely you can just note hearing as well when you hear something. Doesn't matter whether it's loud or quiet. And the fear, you have to note the fear. But being on edge is interesting because it can come from seeing impermanence and suffering and non-self, mainly impermanence, let's say, seeing that nothing is stable. Meditators come to a point where just everything is kind of disturbing to them in a sense. They'll look at a cup, and it's just the cup is it shakes them. So it's not actually fear. The fear is unwholesome. It's not a good thing. But they're shaken by everything because they have this visceral sense that nothing is stable. So they'll look at their bed, and it'll just be a kind of a disturbing sight because they're resonating with this experience of impermanence, seeing that nothing is stable. It's unsettling. That can be a part of the path. It's just important that you note, if you're afraid, that you note that, and that you note the sounds, and that's all.
Bante, the next question. What are the instructions in the process of death? Does the death process inhibit the ability to note? What to do then? What intention to set up in that process? Do I just tell myself I will note as much as possible?
So, I mean, noting, as you can probably already see, isn't possible in every moment of your daily life. Your mind is going to be preoccupied with other things. You can get better at that. So, I had two answers. The first is yes, you should expect to be noting at the moment of death, absolutely. But also the qualities that you have developed through noting in this life will ensure a better state of mind at the moment of death, even for the times when you're not able to note, even during moments that you're not able to know. But you can already see that death isn't categorically different in terms of ultimate reality. It's still just another moment arising and ceasing. So as you can see through your practice in this time, noting is valuable, and in and of itself in terms of how it affects that moment, but it's also a cultivation of valuable mental qualities that see you through the day and through your life, that make your quality of mind better, make your quality of life better, give you a better approach and a better perspective on things. So you're less likely at the moment of death to cling on, to latch on to something that will lead you to be reborn in a bad way, because you're just less likely to latch on to those things already. So 2 answers. Yes, at the moment of death, expect to be mindful, and also expect to be ready for death through being mindful here and now.
Bhante, the next question that we have. In my meditation, the mind chases after pleasurable fantasies and dreams. This goes on for long swaths of time. Should I let it happen and be mindful of it, or try to go back to the breath?
Well, you're probably not noting the liking, no? The chasing, the fact that you like it. Because if you note properly, it will dissolve. It shouldn't last. But you're talking about chasing after something, and the reason why it lasts is because you like it, and because you're not noting the liking. Or if you are, you're not vigilant, you're not diligent about it to the point where it disappears. I mean, it's fine to stay with something that lasts, but such things shouldn't last if you're diligent about noting them. What you'll often find is they come back, but that's different than them staying. So as you note and they disappear, you should fairly quickly go back to the stomach to try and gradually build the habit of not evoking them, not invoking them, or causing them to arise again and again and again. Every time they come up, go back to them, note the liking, note the thinking, note the seeing, or whatever it is, and then right away go back to the stomach until they arise again, and then go back. Teach yourself to stay on track, stay present, and not get caught up in fantasies and dreams. But yeah, note the liking is probably a big thing that you very well might be missing or not paying enough attention to.
Bhante, the next question. I'm currently practicing for 2 hours per day using the basic instructions. Are the first jnanas expected to arise during such a practice, and can they do so without really being clearly aware of them?
Well, yes, if you don't have prior knowledge of what they are, and even if you do but don't have great theoretical knowledge of what they are, it's easy to miss them and not realize that you're going through them. The stages of knowledge are not going to have signposts necessarily, but with the help of a teacher, they can be identified. But outside of intensive practice, they're so gradual and fairly weak that it's quite difficult to. It can be, for many of them, quite difficult to identify that you're going through them, especially the early ones. I wouldn't worry too much about those. You really shouldn't be focused on those at all until you've done several intensive courses and are ready to start to parse through what you've been experiencing. And also the basic instructions are like in the booklet, they're just the first exercise. If you're really interested, you should do the at-home course. I mean, maybe you have done, if you haven't done the at-home course, you really should do that before you have any idea that the jnanas will arise. Because there's more more challenging exercises that will help to develop your mental faculties further, to have more chance of them arising. But can they arise outside of intensive practice? Absolutely. You can become enlightened through something like the at-home course. It's just depends on you. It's not likely, and I don't dare to claim that anyone who's done the at-home course with me has ever become even a sotapanna, let's say, like really gone through all the stages of knowledge. I'd be skeptical that has ever happened, but it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible that someone continuing after the at-home course could eventually become a sotapanna through that. It's just very unlikely, and I don't know that it's ever happened or ever could happen in this day. I mean, whatever will happen, but theoretically it could. It's just up to you. It's much more reasonable that you should get further along in the practice through intensive courses, which is why after you've done the at-home course, we're always saying, hey, the next step is to do intensive practice. It's really on another level.
Bhante, the next question that we have: the more I meditate, the more difficult it becomes to live in society. Former interests and hobbies I have no interest in anymore. It's more difficult to be around people, and especially working in society feels meaningless. Do you have any advice?
I mean, it doesn't have to be more difficult. You just have to change your life. You can't live the way you used to because clearly it's stressful. And you're just realizing that now. I mean, you're realizing the stress that you didn't realize before. So you're inclined and privileged to see some way to live that is more peaceful, more happy. So it doesn't all have to be bad. It's just it's actually good, and it gives you it opens the door for you to live your life in a much more happy way, much less stressful way. But I mean, the best advice is become a monk, or go and live at least in a meditation center. We have rooms here. What is my advice? Come stay here. If you're on that level where you're able to see that the trappings of society, the trappings of the world are not a source of satisfaction, then by all means, there are opportunities and options open for you, not just here, but in different places. If that's not reasonable or possible, you certainly can live, just have to live more simply than before, find a way to live simply. And it's great because with less craving and attachment, you have less needs, you have simpler needs. You need less money to be happy. You also, I guess another thing I should say is that the practice, you have to be careful not to think that the practice is making you less tolerant, because in some ways you're more tolerant, and you should become more tolerant to these things that you're seeing as difficult. So something can feel meaningless and not upset you, and you have to be able to see that difference. So you can work a menial job, something that is simple, preferably something that doesn't require you to think a lot, so that you can keep your mind free to be mindful, but gives you enough money to live. And there you go. You live simple. The work is grueling, or you have to listen to people, hearing. I mean, ideally, you find a way that you don't have to engage with. You find a job where you don't have to engage so much with people, but find some simple job, and live your life simply. But tolerance is important, being tolerant of things that are unpleasant, difficult, meaningless. Because you know the meaning. The meaning is to make money, to get food and shelter, to live, to be able to practice.
Bhante, the next question that we have. You say that every instant of meditation has a good effect. Could you elaborate on this? It is weird how doubt and discouragement keep bringing us back to square one. Should I just note doubting?
Yes. And if you're not doubting, you'll be able to see what I mean. Shouldn't have to elaborate. It's not really something that I can elaborate on. I mean, I suppose I can tell you a little of the theory behind it, but it's much more. After telling you a little bit about the theory, it's important that you actually apply it, and you'll see if you apply, say, doubting, you'll have in that moment confidence. And I mean, that's really the theory behind it. As you note it, you're creating positive states of mind. Most important, clarity. When you say, for example, doubting, your object of focus is no longer that thing that you're doubting. That thing that you're doubting is some conceptual idea, like the idea that noting is good for you. That's still just an idea. But when you say to yourself doubting, your object is that experience of doubting. And because you see the doubt as doubt, you have confidence. And because you have confidence, you have no doubt, so the doubt disappears. Quite useful, no? But the same goes with things like liking or disliking. When you're not liking or disliking, it quickly disappears. Because when you say disliking, you're no longer disliking something. You're seeing something clearly, and that's quite objective. And because you're seeing the disliking clearly, it disappears because you're not feeding it, you're not provoking it. You're not triggering it. Same with liking. And then you just start to be able to note the things that would trigger liking or disliking. So when you say seeing, then liking can't arise or disliking can't arise. If you're eating food and you say tasting, you lose any kind of liking of the food, disliking of the food. You become less picky as an eater. Less picky about your food. And you avoid a lot of sickness as a side effect.
Bhante, the next question. I had been experimenting with other techniques for a while. This led me to eventually see why the technique I learned from you is the best for me. I have tried picking the practice back up, but find it overwhelming to get back to all the steps. I decided to start from the beginning and keep the same pace of progress as during the at-home course, with one new step per week and 1 hour of practice each day. Do you have any advice for someone getting back to the practice after a time of inconsistency?
Well, you really should consider to do an intensive course. It really is. I mean, let's be clear. This at-home course is something new, some innovation. I'm not, it's based on someone else's innovation. I'm not the innovator here, but kind of. I mean, we adapted, I adapted what I saw someone else doing, this kind of phone interview kind of thing, and created this sort of structure to it. But for the longest time, and in most places where you go, they'll take people who have never practiced and put you through intensive practice. We still do that. If you come here and you've never practiced before, we'll take you. We'll lead you through the course. It takes longer. It's more difficult, but it's absolutely a valid way to start, and it accomplishes much more. Now, having done the at-home course, we tend to see better results with the intensive course. More success, let's say, because meditators are already clear what they're getting into. You're in a great spot because you've accomplished the most important thing. Well, one of the most important things from the at-home course. You appreciate and understand the value, which is not an easy thing. And this is a big problem for someone coming to do an intensive course with no knowledge. They will spend the first week wrestling with the very idea of the practice, wondering if this practice is any good. How much wasted time in that first week or more, I have to say about a week on average, where they're not even sure that they should be doing this. They're not even sure that this is good. They're not sure that this teaching is valuable or valid. They don't understand, why am I being made to repeat these words? It's like I'm brainwashing myself or something, you know. They just don't get it, don't appreciate it. You do, you appreciate that. So coming to do an intensive course is really where you should be headed. Coming or going, you know, go anywhere, find a place to do an intensive course in this tradition. That's what I would recommend, absolutely. But it sounds like, as far as at-home practice, it sounds like you're doing great. I mean, how many people aren't able to do what you're doing? How many people listening right now who aren't able to do that? You're a great example for these people. It's great that you said this, because you have given an example, first of all, of the best thing to hear from a teacher is that the teachings that you gave me, I understand, I appreciate them. Who doesn't want to hear that as a teacher, right? But it's not about me, is that all the audience has heard this too. And why it's so wonderful is I can say, you hear this person? This is a person, we have a witness. The Buddha wanted this witness. The Buddha, one of the first things that he wanted was a witness. And not wanted, but the first thing he sought was a witness. And when Kondanya saw the Dhamma, the Buddha said, this is it, you've seen. Someone has seen the truth. This was the start of the Buddha Sasana. So you are this is great to hear. You should be assured, you know, have self-assurance that you are doing something great and are a good example for other people. Not that that should be most important, but should give you confidence that you're doing a great thing. And the next step, when and if you're able, is to find a way to do an intensive course. Maybe you already have, I don't know your personal history, but if you've done one, you can do another. It's really the best way. If you're really into it, you can come and live your life as a meditator, live in the forest, live in a meditation center.
Bhante, that's all the time that we have for today. So we will end our session there. For those of you that had questions that were not answered, you can try asking again next week. Thank you so much, Bhante, for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Subitsu, Dalaur, Sunda, Austin, Siri Chanda, and everyone in the audience. We have some people in the audience who came late who I think could have joined us, but that's okay. Maybe next week. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you everyone for your questions. Those people on YouTube who are tuned in. We get more and more people every week. That's also always great to see. It's encouraging for us to know that people are interested in these things. So appreciate all of you. Appreciate the goodness that has been cultivated at this time, on this occasion, during this session. All of the goodness that we have cultivated at this time, and all of the goodness that we have cultivated in the past. All of the goodness of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. May all of these things protect us. Protect everyone from danger, from enmity, from suffering, from sickness, from trouble, and the violence of the world. May it protect you from the hatred of others. May it protect you from calamity and accidents and natural disasters and all terrible things and all suffering. May it support you on your path, that in this life you might have health, happiness, strength, long life. Cultivate the Buddha's teaching. May you live a happy life in this life and find happiness in future lives, and ultimately find the greatest happiness, that is letting go and freedom from suffering of Nibbana. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.